When Larry came out and the team assembled around him, the very first line was, and I'll clean it up a little bit, losers cry and winners get it the bleep
Right.
done. And I'll tell you what, everybody looked at the manager after that. And that was the signal of this is how it's going to be around here now. This is what we're expected to do. We're playing here to win Major League Baseball games and win championships.
Baseball fans, it is time once again for another episode of Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks. With over 50 years in professional baseball and making a multitude of fantastic relationships along the way, Frank Coppenbarger shares great stories with weekly guests from various areas inside of the game. It's all here on the Fans First Sports Network. Let's get ready to play ball. Here's Frank Coppenbarger.
Hello again, everyone. This is Frank Coppenbarger, and you're here for Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks. And boy, do we have a special guest today. This guy is a Philly legend. And when I say Philly, I don't just mean the Philadelphia Phillies. I mean the entire city of Philadelphia. They all relate to this guy, the great Larry Bowa. Bo, welcome to the show.
Well, it's an honor to be on, Frank, and getting ready for these playoffs. It should be a lot of fun, and we'll see what happens down the road here.
Oh, yeah, and then at the end of our show, I'm gonna ask you to tell me all about your thoughts for the postseason, which is going to happen in just a couple days. But let's
Sounds
just
good.
catch up a little bit. You know, this will be an easy show. The hard part for me is going to be to try to fit it into this time frame because Larry and I spent an awful lot of time together over the years, 2 different times as a coach. And also, he was the Phillies manager for 4 years. We spent a lot of time on the plane, on the bus, and at the ballpark, and probably on a train, too. I'd have to think about it a little bit. So I think we've covered the title of the show, haven't we, Bo?
Yeah, we have. We go back a long way. A lot of good times, man. There's more good times than bad times, believe me. Even during those times we didn't have real good teams, we still had a good time in that clubhouse.
We did. And a good friend of mine all these years, I'm proud to call him a friend. Over 60 years in baseball, ladies and gentlemen. This guy still has the energy more than some of the players have. He's an incredible guy. Phillies legend, Phillies Wall of Famer. In my opinion, he should have been in Cooperstown a long time ago. But, you know, that's for another day. 16 years as a big league shortstop, primarily with the Phillies, but he also was with the Cubs. He went over there and got them jump started and taught them how to win. And they had another guy they threw in on that trade. Ivan DeJesus came to the Phillies. Larry Bowa and some guy named Ryne Sandberg went to the Chicago Cubs. Turns out they got a great player in Larry Bowa and a Hall of Famer in Ryne Sandberg, the late Ryne Sandberg. And Bo and I were just at his funeral about a month ago, and Larry was honored with being one of his pallbearers. So, you know, you got the Cubs going in the right way. You got Rhino going in the right way. You ended your career with the Mets. You were playing over there, and they actually wanted you back for another year, but you had an opportunity to start managing, and you knew you wanted to do that. And you got to start at a pretty good level, AAA in Las Vegas,
Yeah.
in the Pacific League, and in fact, a league that your dad had once played in. Talk about that a little.
My dad played for the St. Louis. He managed in the St. Louis Cardinal organization, and he got as high as AAA. And of course, Sacramento had a AAA baseball team. So I was around baseball since I was, I don't know, able to walk. But I will say this: my dad never once said, "Hey, you have to be a baseball player," but he was always there for me, threw BP to me, hit ground balls to me, told me that I was never going to be a home run hitter, learn how to play the game the right way. So if it wasn't for my dad, and also my mom was a softball player, so I had sort of a good baseball background as I was growing up to be around my mom and my dad, and a great support group. Of course, my sister had a lot to do with that. She had to sacrifice a lot of stuff during the summer so I could play baseball and they could come and watch me. But I was very fortunate to be around two parents that love baseball and love their children. And my dad was always there for me, even though he had to work 2 and 3 jobs. On the weekends, he would be there, and we'd go out, and it would be fundamentals, fundamentals. You have to do this. You have to move runners. You got to make that play. And again, not one time did he say, "Oh, you have to be a base." He said, "If you like this, go for it." And that's exactly what happened. And I was very fortunate to stay away from injuries in the big leagues, but I ended up playing 16 years. You know, being in the right place at the right time, as you well know, Frank, has a lot to do with your success. And when you get an opportunity, you have to take advantage of it. And I was just lucky when I came up. The Phillies were in a rebuilding mode, and they stuck with us because I wasn't very good in the early 70s, but we came together as a group and eventually won a World Series here in 1980.
Well, yeah, that's the 76, 77, 78. You guys won the National League East. Unfortunately, you got knocked off in the league championship series every one of those years, and you had great teams.
We
And
did.
then 79 kind of fell back a little bit. The Pirates jumped
Right.
in there, and they actually won the World Series. But you got it all done, and for the first time in 1980, and that had to be well, it was a special moment in Philadelphia and for all the fan base. The first World Championship in franchise history, and you were right in the middle of it all, buddy.
Well, you know what, Frank? People ask me what was the greatest thing that ever happened to me in a Philly uniform. It's not even close. I've won Gold Gloves. I played All-Star games. I hit 300. Winning a World Series is the ultimate, and there's so many great players that are in the Hall of Fame that never got to a World Series, and to just talk to them and tell them how enjoyable it was and what the fan base was like. You can see the gleam in their eyes. You have to be lucky. I mean, you have to have a good team, but you also have, as you well know, you've been in baseball a long time. You have to get breaks. And those 3 years that we won in a row, it wasn't that we didn't have that good a team, but we kept playing the Big Red Machine and the Dodgers. And at that time, they were juggernauts in baseball. They had two; those were two
Absolutely.
great teams. And then eventually, like you said, we got over the hump. Even though it was a battle, we had to beat Houston to get to the World Series, and then we ended up beating Kansas City. But the fact that able to go through a parade down Broad Street for the first time ever, I could not explain into words what it meant, and to see tears of joy running down these people's faces because it's never happened in Philly before. And hopefully, Charlie did it and you did it in 2008, and hopefully we got one going here in 2025. We have a very good team, and we're going to see what happens here as these playoffs unfold.
Yes, fingers crossed for sure on that. And they
Right.
they certainly have the talent there to do it. And hopefully that's going to happen this time. I can attest there's nothing like a parade in Philadelphia. I can't even imagine what it must have been like in the very first one, because I
It,
remember that 2008 one was something
it,
like I've never seen. So
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, we did the same route that the 2008 team did, but at the end, there was a stadium called JFK that was still up, and it seated 100,000 people. So when the floats and the flatbed trucks came into that stadium, we thought we were just going to get out, and that was the end of the parade. And there was 100,000 people in JFK, and to see that, I mean, you had to scratch your head and say, "Are you kidding me?" And to sort of put everything in proper perspective, last night we had an exhibition game between ourselves. There was over 30,000 people in the stands. I know they were giving away tickets, but the fact that 30,000 people came out, and then I checked the Cleveland Indian Detroit Tiger box score in a playoff game, there was 26,000 people. I'm saying
right.
this city's unbelievable here. I mean, they were out in full force, and it got everybody going a little bit. Those, as you well know, those inter squad games, they're tough to get through. But when you have 30,000 people in the stands and the
There's some
music
juice.
blaring and everything, it
Yeah.
was unbelievable. It was like
Yeah.
a,
Well,
it was like a playoff atmosphere.
I was going to bring that up at the end, but we'll just talk about it now. A brilliant idea. I've been around a long time, been through a lot of practice sessions prior to playoff games. They're in the morning, no one's
Right.
around, and there's not much to it. But to get 31,000 people in there, probably could have sold 70,000 tickets
Oh,
if they would have gone that far. And
there's no
you
question
know,
about that.
and
You,
the money all went to Phillies charities, which is a great
Yep.
cause. And it
Yep.
gave the opportunity to a lot of people that maybe couldn't afford or wouldn't have a way to get a postseason ticket to bring their family to see the players. And the news coverage here was just amazing. What a brilliant idea. Whoever came up with that idea, I guarantee you that's going to be copied going forward.
Oh, there's no question about that. And you made a great point. It's for the people that, I'm not saying they can't afford it, but you come here with a family of four during a regular season, you're talking about parking, you're talking about refreshments, you're talking about your tickets. That's a big bill. There's no question about that. And to let them in free, the parking was free. The only thing that they had to pay for was the concession stands. And you could see a lot of those people they brought their children. And as you well know, Frank, when you have an inter squad game like that, the players are a lot more relaxed. They're willing to sign autographs. There's not a game coming up in a half hour or anything like that where you're playing the Dodgers. But it was sort of like a spring training atmosphere where the players got to mingle with the fans, and I thought that they did a tremendous job doing that last night.
Pretty great idea, really. Very cool. And kudos to the Phillies, and whoever dreamed that one up deserves a raise for sure.
No kidding.
It's a good one.
That was a
Buck's
good one.
career, outstanding career as a player. After he retired from playing, he started managing, as I mentioned, managed in Las Vegas for a couple years. Got an opportunity to go to the big leagues as the manager of the San Diego Padres at a pretty young age back then. How old were you, Bo?
I was 37, I think. 30,
That's
it was
pretty
real.
young, yeah.
Yeah, it was. And the thing about that was, hindsight being 2020, Frank, Jack McKeon asked me to manage AAA. We won a championship there. And then right after that, he says, I want to interview for the manager's job. And of course, when anybody asks you that, when you get done retiring, you say, okay, I'm all in. But hindsight being 2020, I wish I could have stayed another year in AAA because even though it was a young team I was taking over in San Diego, there's probably some other things I could have done to smooth out the transition from a player to a manager. But when somebody says, hey, do you want to manage this team in the big leagues? You're not going to say, well, let me think about it, or I need another year at Vegas. But Vegas was a great place to start. I mean, most guys start in low A, they ride the buses, which I did. I rode a lot of buses playing.
Mike Schmidt did. Mike Schmidt.
Yeah, Mike Schmidt.
The Clearwater team.
Yep,
and stayed the whole year. I was betting that he wouldn't, but he did.
Yeah, he did. I take my hat off to him. You're talking about a Hall of Famer that put up numbers that are off the charts, and he rode the buses with the guys and got down with them. Yeah. It's an experience that people don't realize. Some of these kids, they're in the minor leagues 5, 6, 7 years, and all the bus rides are on and everything because they love the game of baseball, and they just want that opportunity. And half of it, as you well know, Frank, there's guys that have great ability, but maybe because of the organization they're in, they never get an opportunity to play for that team, and they never get to be seen. So you have to be in the right place at the right time, take advantage of the opportunity, and that's sort of what happened in my whole career, being able to take advantage of an opportunity and propel myself forward. But I had great coaches, managers along the way to help me. And the good man above helped me as far as staying injury-free. So I got nothing but thanks for the Phillies taking care of me and the man upstairs taking care of me. No question about that.
Well, that's for sure. But I'm going to back up a little bit, and I'm going to add something to that. Nothing was given to you. You worked for everything you had. Everybody told you were too small, too scrawny, too this, too that. You never made your high school baseball team. Pretty amazing fact. Me as a high school coach, I tell our kids that all the time. Here's a guy in the Wall of Fame plaque out there. Probably should be in Cooperstown. Never even made his high school baseball team.
And you know what, Frank? The fact that if he would have told me you weren't good enough ability-wise, I might have accepted it a little better. But when he kept telling me I'm too small, and then my dad, of course, reinforcing, hey, baseball, you don't have to be 6'5", like in football or basketball. Little guys have a place on the field in baseball. You got to know what you're capable of doing. And in the words of Charlie, or my good friend Charlie Manuel, know thyself. You know you're not a home run hitter. You got to be able to move runners, hit and run, steal, make plays. So I did all the little things that complement the big boys when they came up to the lineup, like Bull and Schmitty. I was very fortunate to play with two power hitters that my job is to get on base, and I try to do that as well as I could. And the fact is that back then everybody had a role. Everybody didn't try to hit home runs like the game is today. The little guys knew they weren't capable of hitting a lot of home runs, so their job was to get on base, create havoc on the base paths. And the game has changed so much now that it's completely different. I still love the game of baseball, but it's played at a different level now.
So now let's talk about you went to Sacramento City College and you went out for the baseball team, played baseball, and
Right.
actually a Philly scout named Eddie Bachman got wind of you and he came to watch you play a doubleheader and he went away with very little to report. What happened that day?
Well, Paulo, he called Paulo and said, "Hey, I got this kid in Sacramento." He said he can field, he got a good arm, he can run. He says, "I don't know if he's going to hit." And so Paul says, "Well, is he going to be drafted?" And he says, "Probably not, because that was the first year draft." He says, "Because he's not a real big guy." And Paul says, "Well, go watch him play and then send me some video, and I'll take a look at him and we'll see, maybe give him," because Eddie said, "The worst can happen here. We sign this kid. He's going to be in the organization as a coach, as a manager. He might get the highest AAA or AA, but he loves baseball, so let's give him an opportunity." So Pope says, "Well, go watch him." So we had a exhibition doubleheader, and lo and behold, Eddie was there. In the first game, I think I got thrown out in the third inning on an umpire's call at home plate. And in the second game, I got thrown out, I think, in the second inning on a play at second. So Eddie called Pope, and Pope said, "How'd the kid do?" And he goes, "I don't know." And he says, "Well, I thought you went." And he says, "I did." He says, "He didn't get past the fourth inning in either game." So Pope
Got
said,
ejected,
"Well,
got
got
ejected from
ejected."
both games, and that was a sign of what was to come.
No kidding.
They
And
got to know
Pope,
about
Pope
you.
said,
Got to know more
Pope told
about
him,
you than you thought.
yeah, Pope said, "Well, he must love baseball to get that excited over exhibition games." He said, "Oh, he loves baseball." He says, "We'll keep tailing him and see what we can do." And eventually, Eddie watched me a couple games and said, "Hey, let's give this guy, let's sign him. You don't have to give him a lot of money." I think I got $2,000 after taxes. It might have been $1,500, and I was all rocking and rolling, ready to go. And they signed me, and basically the rest was history. I went to spring training. I was going to be like a utility player for Spartanburg, South Carolina. I ended up winning the job there. And then in the next 3 years, I played A, AA, and AAA. I went through the whole organization's lower class. And then I eventually got a chance to play in the big leagues and took advantage. And the rest, like I said, I played 16 years and I can really look back, Frank, and say, the only thing I wish I could have done was maybe hit some home runs, which I wasn't able to do or wasn't capable of doing because I wasn't big. But I did everything I wanted to do on a baseball field. I played the game the right way. My dad told me this might be your last game. Every time you put the uniform on, play it hard, play 27 outs and 9 innings. And that was my approach every time I put a baseball uniform on.
Well, that's really good approach and great advice from a dad that played the game himself. So, Bo, let's take a break here for a second, and we will further this conversation about your illustrious career in baseball in just a minute. All right, we're back with Larry Bowa. We were just talking about his intensity and getting ejected from a couple of exhibition games in college, and that was actually good that the guy could put that in his scouting report because the Phillies got to see what they were going to have for a lot of years.
Yeah, I
And
didn't trick him. I didn't trick him. I didn't try to camouflage anything, as you well know. Uh,
I'll tell you
but
what, like
that's
I said, you worked for everything you had. What a career. Finally get to the big leagues after 4 years in the Phillies farm system. You get there in 1970. You start grinding away. When it's all said and done, you got 2 Gold Gloves. You led the National League in fielding percentage 6 times. And think about the guys you were up against:
oh,
Bill
I know.
Russell with the Dodgers, Davey
Right.
Concepcion with the
Yep.
Reds, Ozzie Smith with the Cardinals.
Right.
Pretty incredible, Bo.
You know
Oh,
what, Frank? Those guys you named were outstanding players. Obviously, Ozzie was the best that I have ever seen. He was just coming up and had some great conversations with him. He reminded me a lot of myself, a little guy that made himself a good hitter. No one thought Ozzie Smith would get over 2,000 hits. No one thought that I would get over 2,000 hits, but it's through hard work, dedication, stick-to-itiveness, good coaches, managers staying with you. There's so many things that fall into place here that you have to be able to go along your journey to get to be one of the best in the game. And I was very fortunate to watch Ozzie play, and I was amazed at some of the plays that this guy ever made. And I'm just glad that he got acknowledged first, even though he ended up being a decent hitter, a real good hitter. He got acknowledged for his defensive, what he did on the field, and I'm glad of that, because I think more guys in the middle of the infield should be taken into consideration. As you well know, you have a good defense and good pitching, you got a chance to win a lot of baseball games.
That's what Whitey Herzog used to say about him. He'd say, well, he may not drive in a lot of runs, but how about all the runs he saves from scoring with great
Exactly.
plays? And you know what? You're a very similar player to Ozzie in a lot of ways. You know,
right.
You retired after a remarkable 2,222 games as a major league shortstop. Talk about 2000s, 2,191 hits. Pretty good for a scrawny little guy.
It was, but again, I had a batting coach named Billy DeMars that probably helped me more than anybody in baseball besides my dad. And we would go down to Florida as soon as the season was over, and we'd get in the batting cage and we'd start hitting. And I remember looking at my hands. I had blisters. I was bleeding. I'd tape them up, and he'd go, "We got to keep going." You know, his mantra was, "You're not a fly ball hitter. Hit the ball on the ground. Line drives, hit the other way. Get on base." And he constantly drove that into my head. And if I did something, a bad swing, he'd say, "Nope, that's not good enough. That's not good enough." But it was constructive criticism. It wasn't him getting on me. He was trying to help me. And without him, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I would have been able to get 2,000 hits in the big leagues. It was his patience and being there for me, and my ability. And I wanted to work. I could stay out there 5 hours and keep hitting every day. In fact, Billy at times said, "Okay, that's enough today. We'll come back tomorrow." But I was obsessed with doing that because I knew I had to do these other things to play in the big leagues. I wasn't blessed like Mike Schmidt, who had the greatest ability I've ever seen on a baseball field. Fielding, running, hitting home runs. To be able to play with a guy like him, and of course Steve Carlton, another Hall of Famer, and Pete Rose, God rest his soul, he would have been in there. I would have had the ability to play with three guys on that championship team that, in my opinion, are all Hall of Famers. And that all that does, Frank, is elevates your game. So when you play with guys better than you, it elevates your game. That's why I tell little kids, play with guys a little bit better than you. It'll make you concentrate more, make you want to be competitive with them. And so that's what happened with me. I got to play on some teams that had some outstanding talent, and there's no question it raised the bar for me.
Those mid-'70s and early '80s Phillies, it looked like half the All-Star team out there.
Yeah,
we
had
quite a collection of talent, without a doubt.
Yeah, the one All-Star year we played the 76 in Philly, the Centennial. We had Schmitty on the team, Booney, me, and Vull. You talk about making the All-Star team in your own city, and when they introduce you, the fans going crazy. That's probably second on my list after winning the World Series. Playing an All-Star game in front of your hometown fans is quite an honor.
Well, next year, the Phillies players that make the All-Star team will experience that as the 2026, the 250th anniversary of the United States. That All-Star game will be at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia. And hopefully Rob Thompson will be managing that National League club.
That would be great, man. I told the coaches, I was there last night watching the exhibition games. I said, "Hey, you guys, you don't want to give up your lockers next year for the All-Star game, because whoever comes in, they take everything out of the home team." I said, "So you guys got to make sure you get to the World Series as a National League team. Then Rob and the whole coaching staff can stay right where they are during the break." But it's going to be electric at Citizens Bank Ballpark for the All-Star game. And as you well know, they put those baseballs in that look like golf balls. When they have this home run derby, they're going to be beating on seats and maybe in the third deck at Citizens Bank Park.
Hit the casino out there in center field.
No question. There's going to be some long home runs hit. There's no question about
Yeah.
that.
So now after your San Diego Padre managing experience, you come back to Philadelphia as a coach. You did a little broadcasting too. You came
Right.
back to Philly as a coach with Lee Ilia, and then our mutual dear friend John Vukovic, who you basically grew up with in the
Right.
Sacramento area. And we had so many great years together, the three of us, so much fun. And you were a coach for Nick Leyva. That's when I actually met you. I had to watch you across the field when I was with the Cardinals, and you guys were pretty darn good.
Yeah,
And
we had a good
you were right in the middle of everything. Then we were all together when Leyva was named Phillies manager, and I came to Philadelphia at that time. And then later on, Jim Fregosi, you were with him his entire time too. Phillies got in the '93 World Series, and that in itself was a memorable year, and one in some ways the most popular team of Philadelphia history as far
Yeah.
as the town, because they really resonate with that blue collar group that was on that club. But all those years as a Phillies coach, then you went to the Angels for 3 years, Seattle for a year. You were with Lou Piniella out there. Then you went with the Yankees with Joe Torre for a couple years. Then you followed him to Los Angeles for 3
Right.
more. And then back with the Phillies again. Back with Ryan Sandberg brought you back when he was manager. He brought you back as a coach, and then after he left, Pete McCannon. So
Right.
this is why this is an easy conversation. You and I could talk
you,
all day here because we spent
you,
so many years together.
you know what, Frank? The thing that I take a lot of pride in, not as a manager, but as a coach, and I try to tell these guys coaching today, when you guys want to make a point to get over to some of the players that are playing today, don't make the manager do it. As a coach, you got to be able to get in somebody and say, hey, look, this isn't how we do it, because you want to make the manager comfortable. There's no question about that. And I was very fortunate when I managed. I had Vuk. Vuk, who's, when you play baseball a long time, you have every year you play, you have good friends. I would have to say Vuk was the best friend I've ever had in my entire life. And he was like my first lieutenant. So then when I went into the coaching part with when I was with Lou Piniella and when I was with Joe Torre and even Jim Fregosi, uh, that was my role. Hey, you know what? If there's some tension going on, the guy's mad because he's not playing, go over there and tell him about it. Don't wait for the manager and him to get into confrontation. But these coaches today, and I respect what they're saying, they can't do that because they're afraid of the analytic part of it. The personalities are a lot different. Players playing today. I'm not saying they're sensitive, but every time you say something, they want to know why. Before, back in the day, if a coach told me something and they said, this is how you got to do it, I did it. I said, oh, this guy's been in the big leagues. He's telling me, he's helping me out. But now you got players, and I don't disrespect that. In fact, I sort of respect that. When you tell a guy this is how you make that play, they'll say, well, why can't I make it this way? And you better have an answer for him. Back in the day, when a coach told you something, you did it and kept your mouth shut. Now, the generation is obviously different. They want to know why, and you better have an answer for them. And I think good coaches should have answers for when you're trying to teach somebody how to play the game the right way.
So now, after Terry Francona was let go as the Phillies manager, and we should interject here, he has become a pretty excellent manager since then. He's a surefire Hall of Famer without
No
a doubt.
question.
Took the Reds to the postseason this year when nobody expected it. Already won a couple world championships. Got the Cleveland Indians in there another time and took it to Game 7 with the Cubs. But when his time ran out in Philadelphia, you were named as his replacement, and I got to say, the press conference, the lavish press conference they had to name you as Phillies manager, to me, that entire day signaled a new way of doing business with the Philadelphia Phillies. For years, we would have a press conference in the old press club at Veterans Stadium, and there might be The heat might not be working that day, or the ceiling tile falling in, or three
Right.
light bulbs burned out. But we had the whole top floor of the Lowe's Hotel in Center City with a
Yeah.
lavish spread and a big video on you. And that to me was the first big sign of, hey, it's going to be different going forward here. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And get back to Terry, you're as good and he is a first ballot Hall of Famer once he's retired forever. Uh, he didn't have a real good team, and he did the best he could. But you saw what happened when his teams got better. He learned from his experience in Philly. He's done a tremendous job. But that press conference I was shocked at it. Eddie Wade told me where the press conference. I thought I was going to be at the ballpark, and he says, "No, we're going downtown." And when I walked in there, it was unbelievable. I'd never seen anything like that. And the whole mantra basically was trying to change the mindset of lose, lose, lose every year. No matter what your roster looked like, we had to change the mindset of we got to compete every night. Compete, compete, compete. And we did a pretty good job of that. And then eventually Charlie took over, and as they say, the rest is history. They got to two World Series. They won one in 2008, then came up short against the Yankees. But that sort of set the stage for this ball club doing the right things all the time. I know there was a bad area early in the 2013, 14, back in there. The teams weren't very good, but the fact that we set the standard, what we wanted to do, and now this ball club, Dave Dombrowski has done a tremendous job along with John Middleton. This is a pretty good ball club right now, but they're in a position now, as you well know, Frank. You only get so many opportunities, and that window's shutting. We got to get there this year. There's no question in my
Got
mind.
to come through.
And yeah, it's got to come true this year.
So I want to talk just a little bit. I'm going to tell just a little bit of an inside story here on when you took over as manager. The very first day of spring training is always a big meeting. The whole team's there. They wait for the full squad to report. And I'll be honest with you, the veteran players are like fixing their socks or
Right.
elbowing their buddy next to them, not really paying much attention. The non-roster guys are glued to the manager. That's just kind of how it is. Doesn't matter who the manager is. But when Larry came out and the team assembled around him, the very first line was, and I'll clean it up a little bit, losers cry and winners get it the bleep
Right.
done. And I'll tell you what, everybody looked at the manager after that. And that was the signal of, this is how it's going to be around here now. This is what we're expected to do. We're playing here to win Major League Baseball games and win championships. And you got them pointed in the right direction. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we did. And after I said that, and then I said, I'm getting tired of reading about the Eagles, how great the Eagles organization is. I said, we got to start winning some games here, guys. And that sort of resonated with a lot of guys. And to this day, in fact, I got a call from Pat Burrell the other day, and he's now coaching. Nick Punto's coaching. All those guys that I had when I first came aboard, they thought I was too tough, and they said, "Man, I want to thank you for being what you were. You helped me out a lot in what I'm doing now." And I said, "Well, now you guys know what it's like. Now you're on the other side. Now you're a coach. Players are going to do what they're going to scream at you. They're going to be mad at you." I said, "You got to be able to take it." And but to get calls from guys that at first tried to buck the system maybe a little bit to say, "Hey, thank you," that meant more to me than at the time when I was managing them. Believe me, it means something when you get guys to call you when their careers are over and say, "I just want to thank you for what you did when you managed or coached."
Well, well deserved, and you had their best interest at heart. Maybe it wasn't the way they wanted it to be, but you
Right.
got it pointed in the right direction. And a lot of the Phillies, the credit of the Phillies and the success they've had over the last 25 years goes to you.
Well, I appreciate that. This organization has had its ebbs, as you well know. You've been through the bad times, you've been through the good times. The fact that this fan base still does what they do tells you there's so many avid baseball fans in this city. And I know it's an Eagle town right now because of their recent success, but all we got to do is have another parade down Broad Street, which knock on wood, I'm hoping happens this year. We can get that fan base to be split in half again, because there's a lot leaning towards the Eagles, and they deserve it. Hey, they've had some great years. Now it's our turn. When I say our turn, it's the Phillies' turn to get back on the map and win another World Series.
Well, it's still our turn because you're in your current role since you left being in uniform, although you haven't left being in uniform, is you're a senior advisor to the general manager, and you're in uniform all the time. Do you still throw BP?
I don't throw BP, but I hit ground balls. I go Bobby Dickerson,
I
who
know
I think
you
is
hit
one of the
hundreds
best.
of fungos.
Oh, I hit for ground balls. I hit ground balls. Hopefully, I'll be able to hit ground balls another 5 years from now. But thanks to Bobby Dickerson, who I think's an outstanding infield instructor, he says, "Well, I want you to come down during the home games and help me." I said, "Hey, no problem." And I just watch him, and I look back at my career, and if they do the things they're doing now, when I did it, man, I told them, I said, I might not have made an error ever, because they have so many things they can do, to so many drills that are now they put into play now that we never even thought about. We take our ground balls and throw over, but now there's so many other things you can do to help yourself become a better fielder. And the Phillies are all on board with the analytics and everything. So John Middleton has done a great job keeping this core group together. But this is the year I think that we got to take that next step.
Well, I'll say this about Larry Bowa. You talk about hitting ground balls. I'm not talking about hitting 15 or 20 ground balls. Hundreds of them, and he's hitting ground balls before most people have had their first cup of coffee in the morning. In spring training, out there 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, working with a different infielder or two every day. I go to those spring training games now, and I see him out there on that half field. And hey, this guy's going to be 80 years old in December, and
Right.
he's still got the energy and the passion and the fire. And if he's not in the Phillies uniform, it's just something not right about it.
Well, I appreciate that. And I told that 93 team, I said, you guys don't know how lucky you are. Me and Vuk are both at you. We had a double barrel shotgun going with Vuk and I, because they said, "Oh, now who do they want?" We get Crucky out there at 7:30 in the morning on that half field at Jack Russell, and he'd look up like, "Are you kidding me?" And I said, "Hey, we got to lose some lbs, you know." Jim
No,
Fregosi said, "You're not playing till you lose 5 or 10 pounds." So we take him out there. He'd get double teamed with me and Vuk, and he'd just shake his head. But he looked back on it. In fact, we were talking about it the other day, about all those mornings at 7:30 in the morning where Vuk and I had him out there taking ground ball after ground ball.
I'll never forget, and I'm gonna wrap it up after this one, but I'm gonna tell it. So I'll never forget Crockett put on some weight one winter and comes to spring training. Well, we have a jersey based off what they wore the year before. So he
Right.
puts his jersey on, not fitting very well, pretty tight. And it went on for a few days. He didn't say anything to me about his shirt.
Right.
But one day, Lee Thomas, the general manager, came downstairs and said, "Do you think you could get Cruck another jersey?" I go, "Yeah." And I had a great relationship with Lee. So I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, because he's too fat and it doesn't look very good on him anymore." I said, "Oh, so now it's my problem. Whatever happened to make him run around the block a few times?"
Right. Johnny didn't do too much working out after the last game until the first spring training day.
It didn't matter, though. The guy could wake up on Christmas morning and
Yeah,
get 2 or 3 hits.
yeah, he could. Yeah, he could. That was a great group. You know what, Frank? You mentioned that. That was a great group to be around, because everyone thought we were going to be in last place. It was a bunch
Yeah.
of guys that were towards the end of their careers, and to see that team come together and to prove to other people, hey, we still got something left. That was a fun time for me and my good buddy Vuk. We had a good time that year. It was a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
we came up a little short, but we had a good run. There's no question about
My
that.
hair was blonde before that season. Now look what happened.
Mitch gave you a few gray hairs.
Well, he was one of them, that's for sure. Well, listen, Bo, we can talk all day long, but I know you got somewhere to be, and we're running a little short on time here. But I want to thank you so much for being a guest on the show. And this has been an excellent episode, and I hope the fans will enjoy it. I know they will, and wishing the Phillies all the best here in 2025, and hopefully there'll be a parade down Broad Street.
Well, I want to thank you for having me on your show. And you've come a long way, man. You went from the clubhouse, a traveling secretary. Now you're a coach for a high school team. You have your own podcast. I tell you what, you got a whole new second life going right now. So this was fun, and I had a good time. And it's great to reminisce over all the things that we've been through. A lot of ups and downs, but more ups than downs. And that's what it's all about. We had a good time when we were together. And I'm going to make a prediction on your show that if we don't get to the World Series, I'm going to be very disappointed this year.
All right. Good luck to the Phillies, and thanks a lot, Larry.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks with Frank Coppenbarger. Tune in next week for another great episode on the Fans First Sports Network.